The global racial justice movement is shedding light on the massive gender, racial, and ethnic inequalities in the business world. In particular, data shows the vast majority of venture capital money is in the hands of white men. According to a 2018 study by Richard Kirby of Equal Ventures, 70% of partners in venture capital firms identify as white, 26% are Asian, 3% are Black, and just 1% are Latino. Those figures get even more stark when taking into account the share of money controlled by these VC firms. Nearly 93% is operated by firms owned by white men. That leaves just over 7% of an estimated $70 trillion in the hands of women and minority-owned firms. Malcolm Jenkins is hoping to change those numbers. He's a co-founder of Broad Street Ventures. He's also a two-time Super Bowl champion and safety for the New Orleans Saints, as well as vice president of the NFL Players Association. And he joins me now from Philadelphia. Malcolm, welcome. Great to have you with us. What are the goals of your organization, and how do you plan to fix these dramatic inequalities in venture capital?
Well, yeah, I think the first plan that we have with Broad Street Ventures, which is our venture capital fund, is to target, Black and brown athletes and entertainers to use group economics. When we start to look at, how we earn our money as athletes and entertainers, a lot of the time we're focused only on labor, right, and what we can make off our talents, and then that's it. And we're trying to make that stretch. But when you look at everybody else, who's really making money, they're doing it through passive income. It's not about their labor, it's about their investments. And the one thing that we have is social capital, right? The ability for brands to want to align with us. And traditionally, that's been in an endorsement type of relationship. But I think you see a wave of athletes who are more interested in the equity play. And so for us, we understand that we have more power and more leverage when we do that together. So creating Broad Street Ventures was first to collectively use our social capital to get into some of these quality deals alongside of the other top 20 VCs that are making all of the returns. The second part of it was to be very intentional in setting up spaces for African Americans and people of color to get into some of these deals. And one of the reasons that we formed this fund is because, and I think we're the first ones to do it, that is completely funded by Black and brown athletes and that is completely managed by Black and brown folks. And so for us, Alana Johnson is our general partner, along with Eric Campbell. She's one of the very few Black women who's in charge of a fund in this space. And so we're very, very intentional about who we put in what position and how we get into deals, knowing that there are very few people that look like us. But once we get ourselves in this door, hopefully we prop it open for others to follow suit.
How do you get athletes whose their head is in the game, right? They're not thinking about the future. They're not really thinking about their financial future. How do you get athletes at that point to start thinking that far ahead?
Well, that's one of the things that I had to come to terms with, is to really, think about in my career, when I'm done playing, what is it that I want for my family? You realize that you don't have enough time to put, eyes on all of your finances. So what we want to do is create a vehicle in which athletes have access to, one, get educated on what venture capital is, how do you invest, what do you invest in, what strategies we use. And we do that with quarterly seminars where it's completely free. They come in and just get education on how to move in this space. But secondly, being more involved, we want them to be able to have a vehicle to do due diligence. A lot of the times athletes get deals and we're told to invest, and all we get is a good idea or PowerPoint. We have no infrastructure to, submit deals and to get feedback on them and a due diligence of if this is a good investment or not. And so we see that as a resource. And so, so that guys can do what they do on the field and not necessarily worry about everything. But we do want them to be more active in taking control of their own finances and thinking about how to make money outside of what they do on the court or on the field.
It's so great and so forward-looking. And, of course, we are talking to you during a time when police reform and racial justice is again at the forefront, with the trial of Derek Chauvin ongoing and the shooting death of Daunte Wright so recently. You are a co-founder of the Players Coalition Advocacy Group. Broadly, what would reform and justice look like to you?
Well, I think, if we continue to talk about police reform, I think we're selling ourselves short. We continue to lose lives of people over, incidents that no one should lose their lives over. And training and things like that always come up. But quite frankly, I think we're just doing policing wrong, right? We don't need officers with firearms to give people traffic tickets or to respond to mental health issues or domestic issues or drug issues, because they're simply not trained or equipped for that. We need, as crime is rising in the country right now, and we see, terrible violence in some of these poor Black and brown communities. Those communities want to feel protected as well. And right now, the way that we're doing policing has completely eroded the trust from the community to police, and we have to really reshape what it means to be policing and move away from this police state and move to a more targeted task force of people who are trained to deal with the various issues that plague certain communities.
And you are a top union member for the NFLPA. What have you heard from fellow players? Are they satisfied with how the NFL has responded to last year's increased focus on the Black Lives Matter movement? Or, what more would they like to see from the league and Commissioner Roger Goodell this year?
Yeah, I think I'll speak on behalf of myself and as somebody who's is on the executive committee for the PA, but also has been in this social justice work for a few years now. I think everybody is happy. We see it around the country with sports leagues, with the messaging and the branding and cutting checks to grassroots organizations that are doing the work. All of that stuff is so necessary. But for me, I always look at potential. How does a company or organization like the NFL, how can they actually have change on the grass level? And we've seen, even with Major League Baseball moving their All-Star game out of Atlanta because of those new policies around voting, they have the political power to be able to, move things, and especially the NFL owners. And so that's really what I judge, is how, based off of the power that you have in all of these specific markets, the cities and the states, how are you using, the NFL shield or their connections to actually push for some of this policy on the ground? There's been examples of it, but I think when league ownership and team ownership starts to really think in that way, the effect that we can have is exponential. Right now, we're just seeing what's happening off of the backs of the players and some of the checks that these leagues have been writing. But when they decide to get into the fight with their real power and their full potential, I think we could actually see the real change that we're all fighting for.
Oh, well, that is very exciting. Malcolm Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insight and your time.
Thank you.